When you think about Japan, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For a lot of people, it's this image of an isolated island, a culture that developed all on its own, right? Well, what if I told you the real secret to its unique culture wasn't isolation at all, but the complete opposite? Today, we're going to dive into Japan's incredible history as a master of taking things from the outside and making them its own. So, that's the big question we're tackling today. What is the secret ingredient to Japanese culture? Is it really all about isolation? I think you'll find the real story is, well, it's a lot more exciting and way more complex. All right, our story really kicks off way back in ancient times. And what you're looking at right here, this is the Shaka Triad. It's one of the earliest and most important Buddhist sculptures in all of Japan. And really, it's more than just a piece of art. It's a symbol of a massive turning point, that exact moment when brand new ideas, new ways of doing things, and even a whole new religion flooded in from the Asian mainland. This right here set the stage for everything that was about to come. Okay, so here's the game plan for our journey today. First, we'll look at Japan's relationship with the outside world. Then, we'll see how standards from the continent arrived. After that, we'll get into the good stuff, how imitation turned into pure creation. We'll touch on some totally new encounters, and finally, we'll pinpoint the real power behind all this cultural change. All right, first up, let's talk about Japanese culture and its relationship with the outside world. And believe me, it's probably not the story you've heard before. This quote really hits the nail on the head. Japanese culture is a layered culture. It absorbs foreign elements, discards what's unnecessary, and completely digests what is needed, making it its own. So instead of thinking of it like a sealed-off box, picture it more like a really sophisticated filter system. For centuries, new ideas have been flowing in, but they don't just get copied and pasted. Nope. There's this amazing process of sifting through it all, keeping the good stuff, throwing out what doesn't fit, and then completely transforming what's left into something new, something Japanese. So where did this all begin? Let's rewind and look at that first huge wave of influence from the continent that really set the new standards for Japan. So imagine this. For a long, long time, Japan's world was pretty much, well, Japan. Everything was centered on its own islands. But then, starting around the 6th century, this absolute flood of new ideas comes pouring in from the Korean peninsula and mainland China. We're talking writing, government, religion, art, you name it. And these weren't just small suggestions. They were a whole new blueprint, a new standard for what it meant to be an advanced society. And you can't overstate how huge of a deal this was. It completely changed how people saw their place in the world. Before, the worldview was basically just the Japanese islands. That was the world. But after, suddenly the map got a whole lot bigger. Japan was now part of a wider world, and China was this massive, advanced civilization to look up to. That's a game-changing shift in identity right there. Okay, but here's where the story gets really, really cool. It wasn't about just becoming a mini China. Not at all. It was about taking all that new influence and using it as a launchpad to create something completely new and unique. And that brings us to this key idea, tofu, which translates to Tang style. Now, your first thought might be, okay, so they were just copying Tang Dynasty China, but it's way more subtle than that. Tofu wasn't a direct copy. It was more like an imagined version of China, a style built on the idea of Tang culture, kind of an idealized greatest hits version. And a big reason they could do this, well, it was geography. As this quote points out, because Japan was separated by the sea, it was distant. This distance allowed it to transform the things it received from the Tang. That sea wasn't just a barrier, it was a buffer. It gave them the time and space to pick and choose, to tinker and to transform whatever they adopted until it fit just right. And that's exactly how tofu, that idealized Tang style, eventually morphed into wafu, a style that was 100% Japanese. Now, this whole idea of adapting things might sound a little abstract, but you can actually see it and even taste it in something we can all understand: food. Let's take a look at how Japanese cooking evolves. It's the perfect example. So let's say you're a warrior in the Sengoku period, way back when. Your dinner would be pretty straightforward. The main flavors are just salt and vinegar, sitting there in little dishes on your plate. And the food itself? Simple stuff, like dried abalone or jellyfish. You just dip your food into the seasoning for flavor. That's it. Almost nobody was actually cooking with seasonings yet. But then, the Edo period rolls around, and bam! A total culinary revolution. This is when liquid seasonings, especially soy sauce and cooking sake, became widely available. And that changed everything. Suddenly, you could infuse flavors directly into the food while it cooked, through things like simmering and braising. The food wasn't just dipped in flavor anymore, it was cooked in it. This made everything richer, way more complex. It was a complete and total transformation of Japanese cuisine. All right, let's fast forward a few centuries. After that first huge wave of influence from Asia, a totally different kind of outside world shows up on the doorstep, and it kicks off another massive period of change. We're talking about the 16th century, when Europeans first arrived. The Japanese called them Nanban, which means southern barbarians. And their arrival was a culture shock like nothing before. I mean, these people looked different, they dressed differently, and they brought with them wild new technology, like guns, and a completely foreign religion, Christianity. It was mind-blowing. And this encounter really forced Japan to think about itself in a new way. See, before, the main us versus them was Japan versus China. But now this word ikoku, which means foreign countries, had to stretch to include these Europeans. And here's the fascinating twist. By meeting people who were so different, Japan's own sense of self, what they called wacho, or our dynasty, actually got stronger. It became clearer than ever what it meant to be Japanese. So, if you look at this timeline, you can see this clear pattern playing out over the centuries, right? You've got that early period of soaking up everything from China and Korea. Then, a long phase of adapting all that stuff to create a truly Japanese wafu style. And then, boom, the Europeans arrive in the 16th century, and the whole cycle of encounter and adaptation starts all over again. Which brings us to our final point. We've seen this pattern repeat itself. So what's the real engine driving this whole process? Let's break down the secret formula. It really boils down to this 4-step cycle that just keeps repeating. Step 1, encounter. Something new arrives from the outside. Step 2, acceptance. They don't reject it, they actively bring it in and check it out. Then comes the crucial part, step 3, transformation. This is where it gets tweaked, changed, and customized to fit the Japanese context. And finally, step 4, fusion. The new thing becomes so perfectly blended in that it's not even seen as foreign anymore. It's just Japanese. And that, right there, is the real takeaway. Japan's cultural genius isn't a product of isolation. It's the exact opposite. It's this incredible creative editing ability, a unique talent for looking at the outside world, taking the best parts, and then brilliantly reinventing them into something new, something completely and unmistakably Japanese. So that leaves us with a final question to think about. This whole process, this amazing ability to adopt and adapt, it didn't just stop 100 years ago. It's still happening right now. So when you look at modern Japan, its technology, its art, its food, where do you see it? Where is that ancient cultural engine still hard at work today, shaping what it means to be Japanese in our modern world?